Hi, welcome to August 2017 Houston Clutter Coaching Meetup Group. I'm Gayle Goddard. Say hi.
Hi.
We are going to talk about Clutter to Calamity, organized for safety and ease of access. This came up because I went to go do a bit of job that was really densely packed, and the house had goat trails through it. And as I walked through the house and I was trying to decide how long I thought it was going to take and what kind of resources I was going to have to bring to bear and how we were going to manage working in the job site, I just felt like anybody that turns left 4 degrees while they're going down this goat trail is going to end up injured. And so it made me start thinking about that and made me want to make this a topic. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And let me flip the page. So we talk all the time about how clutter interferes with our life and messes with how we enjoy our house and how we are inconvenienced because it's hard to get things in or out, put things away is hard, that kind of stuff. Oh, we can't find what we want, and so we buy the Band-Aids again. You know, these are the kinds of inconvenience factors that come from having clutter get in your way, and we talk about that all the time in here. But that's the lighter version. And the less light version, the harsher version, is the stuff is so dense that they become physical health hazards. That movement in the house is restricted, access, being able to go in and out is restricted, and the ability to hurt yourself becomes sort of part of the landscape all the time. And in that way, clutter is kind of threatening to your life, right? If it's not easy for you to walk around in the house, then it's not safe for you to do it, and people get hurt. And I just try to imagine, years ago I had a client who, she's passed away now, but she was a client that I would qualify as a hoarder. And she lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, and there was a point before I met her where she had some sort of heart issue, and they called the EMS. So the EMS went in the door and around through this very compactly, densely full apartment, and they made it around with their gear, but then in order to get her out, they had to take the window out and take her out through the window, because once you get on the gurney, then you have this long, big piece of equipment with 2 big guys holding it,
And they can't see.
and they got to be able to get back through the house, right? And so she had to be lifted out through the window. And that to me was the first live example for me of this is how the clutter is making her life not safe, because it was so hard for the EMS to get to her and then get her back out again. And luckily it was a small apartment and it was not far from the bed to the window, and you know, they made it all happen, but they had to like deconstruct things out of the way. They had to move a television, they had to move boxes, they had to uncover the window and knock it out. You know, like they took something out and opened the window. I guess it was the screen. They took something out and then opened the window and, you know, got her through that way. But it must have been so hard for them and so dangerous for them. I think of these young guys that work out all day long and, you know, they're trying really hard to be strong, but they can twist their ankles too. Right? I mean, if they had stepped wrong on something, you know, they might have lost control of their ankles too while they were holding a person and a gear, and, you know, they always come with so much stuff. So anyway, I think that there are some real world applications for access. Restricted access is a health hazard for you. And so we're going to talk about those examples today. I will say that, hi, please come in. Your mobility affects this as well. So what an agile person who is healthy and in good shape can do is completely different than somebody who has a bum knee or a twisted ankle or who is using a walker or crutches. If they're moving along, and that is a precarious, you know, dangerous, not very strong person, that mobility means that you have to have more space to get through, not less. And a lot of times, as the space shrinks, the person gets older and more unsteady. And so there's sort of an inverse relationship between what they have the capacity to manage and what they have use of to work around in the house. And so your mobility is always going to impact this as well. So today I'm going to go through a list. We're just going to go through and ask some questions and talk about the ways that that is going to be a problem for people. And we're going to run through a list of 10 and see what you guys have to say about it. So number 1, are there parts of your house that you can't easily reach? For instance, are there doors that are unusable or blocked off? And I also thought about an example of the end of the hallway is blocked off. Like sometimes people decide that there's more than one door into the hallway, and so they block one of them with stuff, either inside the hallway or outside the hallway, so that one access is closed because they have another one. Or the patio door. Like you can get in and out of the front door, you can get in and out of the back door, and they'll cover up the patio door. So you can't access the patio door. So I think in an effort to gain floor space, we get kind of creative about how we're going to stack things in the house. And sometimes that means that we start blocking access to the house, right? And the only issue about that is then when you need to go out the door that's blocked, you can't get out of it, right? So I'm trying to uncover those spaces, I think is an important adaptation to make for your own safety. I mean, I think about, let's say the house is on fire, right? You never get to go out the door. Like the fire is not going to be convenient. Like if you always go out the back door because that's the way to the car, there's no guarantee that the fire is going to be in a part of the house where you will still have access to the back door, right? So you want to have more than one way to get out of the house. And if you've blocked all of them off except the one that you use 100% of the time, then that's going to be a problem, right? Fire is one of those things that you got to move, right? There's no dawdling while you move stuff out of your way. So we want to make sure that what access you have to get in and out of the house is a clear space for you. Do you have things you regularly access that are currently stored so you have to move several objects to get to what you want? Ed was talking to me about this because he said there's stuff that he uses all the time, but they're parked in such a way that he has to move stuff out of the way to go get what he wants and pull it out and then put it back and then put the stuff in front of it back. I think we do that a lot without thinking about it. Like this is where this is where the object gets parked. And so it gets parked and then we put a bunch of stuff in front of it, and then 3 times a week we have to go and uncover it to get to the thing that we want. And we don't think about frequency of use when we're planning how the stuff is going to be laid out in the house. And so if you end up having to go and move stuff all the time, every time you want something, it's an inconvenience factor, but it's also, if you think about how heavy this stuff is that you have to move, we get older, we get in less strength, we're less in shape, and we're lifting and twisting. It's like we're adding exercise in, which on the one hand I guess is good, but on the other hand, if you're doing more lifting than is appropriate for your health or your well-being, then you may be hurting yourself because you're moving the boxes to get to the thing that you want all the time, right? So you have to take that into consideration as you're deciding how to stack and store stuff. You don't want it to be 47 layers of, deadlifting of weight. What if you have back issues? What if you have shoulder issues? A lot of my clients have bum shoulders, bum knees, bum ankles, and the whole lift and twist thing. My roommate had a spiral fracture on her leg bone from twisting with the water hose, from watering the plants to putting water in the dog bowl. And that twist made her bone go, and she fell on the ground. And this was years ago. I mean, it was while she was married and had kids at home, and she just broke her ankle while she was standing there, and she just twisted a little bit. So you never know what kind of stuff is going to cause injury, and you want to take that into consideration. Lifting a bunch of weight to get to your things, it's that much more possibility, right? And then there's, it makes you hot and sweaty, which right now is a problem for all of us. Are there rooms or spaces that you can't use at all? So the one that came to mind immediately was the junk room. Everybody has the junk room that you can't get in, right? But then there's also the blocked into the hallway or the blocked stairs. So for some reason, people like to, I guess they think of stairs as additional floor space. And so they like decide, okay, the stairs this wide, don't really need all that. Let me park a bunch of stuff on every step all the way up the stairs and reduce my pathway to half, right? And then the piles start to slide, and they slide down, and they slide out, and eventually that pathway gets really, really narrow for people. And the hazard, of course, is if you trip and fall on the stairs, you're just going to slide down the stuff all the way down to the bottom of the stairs. And, you know, you don't want to be creeping in such a narrow space. Stairs are difficult enough to navigate. If you have mobility issues, they're horrible to navigate. And you know, you need all the room you can to safely go up and down stairs and be able to hold on the handrail and have it be, if you put your foot down, your foot's not going to slip. If there's a bunch of stuff up the wall on all the stairs, it's going to be a hazard, right? And I know that people do it very gingerly and they're very careful, which works until the one time when you're not careful enough and you get hurt, right? Besides on the stairs, blocking a hallway is sort of like blocking the highway. Imagine that you're on the highway and you know what it's like when you're going along the 4-lane highway and suddenly it's down to 1 lane and like everybody is like, and it backs up and it chokes up and it's this big huge choke point, right? Adding things into the hallway so that you have a narrow path to go is like creating a highway choke where the lanes are suddenly restricted. It slows everybody down, it makes everybody, they start having wrecks, right? And it gets worse, they're all down to 1 lane and they're wrecking their cars, right? There's a household equivalent of that. As you choke the space down, it gets more and more narrow for you to pass, and it gets that much, there's more and more for you to get past. And it's not safe, right? Here's one. Can you reach your fire extinguisher easily and quickly? So a lot of times I go in houses and they're really dense, but the fire extinguisher is on the corner of the stove, on the counter. It's easy to get to. But then sometimes I go in and the fire extinguisher is down the hall in the utility room, around the thing, up on the shelf, right? It's a long ways away. And if suddenly the pan on the stove erupts into flames, right, you have to react really quickly. Now, I've never had to put out a stove fire, but I'm guessing you probably have. You cook more than me, no?
Not.
Hey! Yay! But it happens, I know it happens. And you have to be able to get your hands on the fire extinguisher and make it work, and you know. If it's not easy to get to, if you have to move stuff out of the way to get to it, if you have to go dig it out and fish it out from around a bunch of stuff, in the meantime, you know, stuff's burning over there, right? Your house is catching on fire. So fire extinguisher is one of those things that you want to have clear access to and have it be close to where you think it's going to get used. So kitchen is one. You should always have one in the kitchen. But where else do you think?
Utility room is not a bad idea if you have.
Because there's a dryer and
Yeah.
then it tends to catch on fire,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, near the garage maybe.
Yeah.
And the garage, right? Yeah, I mean there's a couple of places where you buy the 2-pack or the 3-pack and you want to go put them in some hot spots. Hot spots, right? Okay. Can you navigate the house easily during the day? Is it easy and safe to move around? Do you step over things to move around the house? So I often go on assessments where I'm being taken on the tour of the house, and as we walk around, we'll be walking in the pathway, and then suddenly the pathway will shrink to about 6 inches because there'll be something here and something here, and I'll get the toss over the shoulder, watch your step here. And so what that means is pause, step over the 6-inch gap, step over it again. Or work your foot through the hole, but be really careful while you do that. And I'm always struck by the idea that I'm only having to do this once on the inbound and once on the when I come back out again. But the person that lives there has to do it all day, every day. Like they have to get to this point where they have to stop and very gingerly navigate over this obstacle course, which means that they're sort of putting themselves at risk several times a day. And I'm always surprised that it doesn't register for people that, gee, this might be scary and dangerous and maybe I should fix that. Anyway, it is a problem when it gets that narrow. Really, you're trying to prevent tripping and injury, right? Like this is the place where you are in a hurry, you're tired, and you step up and you lift your foot and it catches on something on the way by. And then if you're surrounded by stuff on each side, you're gonna fall into the piles, right? You're gonna collapse onto the boxes that you're very carefully balancing, or that they're stacked, you know? And maybe the boxes have given them, or maybe they don't, or maybe when you land on them, the stuff in the boxes break and everything collapses and you get injured from falling on stuff as opposed to just falling, right? That hazard of making the pathway so narrow that you can't get down it is just a trip hazard waiting to happen. And you know, I'm one of those people that has injured my ankle, and so I don't trust my ankle 100% anymore. And I don't do things like jump or climb a lot. Like I'm very careful about how I walk and place my feet. I don't want to, you know, injure my ankle again. And so I have to be really careful when I navigate homes like that to make sure that I'm stepping correctly. And I pay really close attention because I don't want to be landing on your boxes either. So can you easily navigate during the night to the bathroom? This is one of the things that whenever you wake up in the middle of the night and you have to go to the bathroom, you never want to turn the light on. Like, forget it. You don't want to turn the light on. You want to get into the bathroom and get out and wake up as little as possible and get back to bed. But if that pathway to the bathroom isn't clear, you're going to stub your toe, you're going to trip in the dark. One time I pulled down a piece of luggage because I was going to pack the next day, and I put it over out of my walking path. Like my path is completely clear. I put the luggage next to the window, thinking I was being smart, and then I had to go walk over in the dark to turn a light off and forgot it was there and stubbed my toe. It's like it was completely wide open space and I still kicked my foot into the luggage. So what you do in the daytime, because you can see, is a completely different process at night. When you're walking in the dark and you're half asleep and you're trying to stumble. I don't know about you, but I start waking up, I'm unsteady because I'm not awake, right? So you put all those things together, and guess who's walking into the door frame, or guess who's stubbing their foot on whatever's on the way to the bathroom, or hitting the piece of paper or the rug wrong and slipping and falling, right? It's one of those things you have to think about. Sure, I can do this during the day, but can I make this path happen at night without getting hurt? The other thing is I tend to get up in the middle of the night because I think it's too hot, and I want to change the thermostat, which is of course in another room, which requires me to walk in the dark down the hall and around the furniture, and I'm trying not to turn anything on, right? But you know, 50% of the time I kick my foot on a piece of furniture because I'm walking in the dark, right? Yeah, stupid on my part. And if there's stuff in the pathway, like I have clear walkways all the way around the house. If there's stuff in the pathway, it's that much more dangerous to do it in the dark, right? And the farther you walk from the bed, the more chances you are to get hurt, right? The thermostat is never like close by, right? Okay. Can your guests get around at night from the guest room to the bathroom? So you have all those piles memorized, right? You can get up in the dark and you know generally where things are being parked, and you sort of walk by memory of how things are laid out. But if somebody's staying at your house, they're not going to know where the piles are, right? They're going to get up and try to walk, and their path, if it's not clear, they're going down in the hallway too. That's either that or in the bedroom, right? And I had the issue in Beth's house because I was in the room that is this guest/art room, and so there was artwork and frames along the edges of the walls, and I clipped those a couple of times. That was painful. And I know better, right? Because like I knew it was there, and I got up in the dark anyway. This happens to me because I get on the floor a lot to work at clients, And then when I have to get up, I have to push against something to help me get up because my knee is not so great. And so I need the extra pressure to get up. If you're somebody that has limited mobility, getting up off the floor is a problem. So imagine that you're walking along and you fell in the middle of a bunch of piles of stuff. If you needed to reach out and push against something in order to get yourself back up, could you find something solid to push on? Could you reach a wall? Could you reach a piece of furniture that was stationary? Like, you can't just reach out and lean onto any cardboard box, right? Because it's going to collapse under the weight. So if you imagine that those pathways are full of obstacles to you getting off the floor, you might want to think about, okay, if I fall here, how am I getting up? I can't reach the bed. I can't reach the wall. Everything here, if I touch it, it's going to knock a box down on my head. Like, if you lean on something, it's going to collapse or something's going to fall. I find that a lot of the piles that I see are built over time, right? So it's not that the heavy stuff is on the bottom. It's just that there's some stuff on the bottom, and then there's some more stuff on top of that, and then later some more stuff on top of that, without much thought about its stability, or, you know, the heavier stuff's on top and the easier, crushier stuff is on the bottom. And the slightest disruption of that makes that whole thing collapse, right? It'll be very precariously balanced until you bump it with your booty on the way by, and then it goes, right? You know that's happened a million times, right? So it is something to consider that if you build your piles over time, you're going to make some haphazard towers that are barely structurally sound. And if you're not an engineer, they're probably not in a really stable situation. They're not structurally sound. So it makes them a tripping hazard. It makes it hard for you to get up. You can't use them as braces, and you can't prevent them from collapsing on you if you're not careful. You hear the stories about, we've all heard stories about people dying in their houses. So extreme hoarding situations, and they get trapped under stuff that falls on them because they keep making it bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually something falls over on top of them and they can't get out. 99.9% of us are not in that situation, but it doesn't take very much to make the house a little bit dangerous instead of safe. You see the difference? Oh. So now think about, is your access clear if the house was on fire, if a burglary was taking place, if you were having a medical emergency, and suddenly you needed to race out of the house, or people needed to race into the house. So imagine that you've fallen and you can't get up. Ha ha ha. You have a button, come and help me. So the EMS guys are going to come, and the first thing they're going to do is break down your door. And then they're going to have to get through the house to you with their equipment and their gurney, and then get you out with all that stuff. So two guys and a big long, either a long flat thing that they're carrying, or the thing on wheels, depending on what they can get in. And they always come with 2 boxes of gear. Like, they're always slinging a bag, and they're carrying things that look like massive toolboxes because they're bringing all the equipment in to treat you, right? Try to imagine that Sherpa pack of stuff coming into the house. And could they get down your pathways with all that stuff? Or would they have to take you out the window like the other lady, right? That's something to consider. Could you get from your bed and run out to a door if the house is on fire? Could you let people into the house to get to you if you were having a heart attack, or you had fallen and had broken something and couldn't get up? Those pathways need to be clear for the people with the gear that are going to come and help you when you're really in trouble, right? The biggest one that I worry about is fire, because you don't have any way to predict where the fire is going to start. You know, generally there's places that are reasonable, like it might start in the kitchen, it might be electrical wire, it might be the AC unit that overheats in Houston, and something, you know, like there's some things that you might be able to predict, but generally you really don't know what's going to fail when, and you need to be able to get out some way. And if your windows are blocked and your doors are blocked and the patio door's blocked and the stairway's blocked, and you have a few minutes at most to get out safely, it better not be hard, right? You need to be able to do it while you're panicked and afraid and freaking out, right? It's all well and good to be able to navigate when you're healthy and well and hale and safe and it's light. But if you take all those things away and suddenly it's dark and you're panicked, or you are hurt, or you're, you know, coughing from smoke or whatever, you want that path to be short and clear so that you can navigate it in a smoke cloud, or people can come to you easily and get you out. You see what I'm saying? Think about a flood. All the people that lived in Meyerland area that flooded for tax day, and then again, what was the next one? They did the tax day floods, and then
Before Memorial Day.
yeah, Memorial Day, right. So we had 2 floods, big floods in 2 years in the same area. And those people had no idea what was coming that day. And suddenly there's water rolling in their house. And like once the water starts rolling in the house, you're done. That's it. There's no fixing it. And so they had to try to save stuff, save themselves, get their pets out. And they didn't have a whole lot of time to do it. And really they could just sort of climb up on stuff and go up in the air and hopefully, you know, go away. Get above it until it went by. If you can't do that, if you can't navigate in a hurry in there, you're going to get really wet, or you're not going to survive the flood. I mean, it needs to be, you need to have access for safe ingress, egress. And I did this short on that because I think that's the most important thing. If you have a pathway to get you in and out of the house safely, or to get rescue people to you, if you're flooded in and somebody has to come in with a boat, or they have to come in and help you get out because half the house is underwater, you know, you want that pathway to be as clear as possible, right? Talked about EMTs, okay. The other thing is if you have visitors to the house, maybe you're cool, but maybe visitors come to the house that have mobility issues. Like maybe your parents are coming over and they're using a walker or crutches, or they're not super stable. My stepmother, years ago now, wrecked a bike and had a brain injury, and it messed with her vision in one eye, so she has some depth perception issues, which means that walking is a little bit dicey for her. The floor needs to be straight because she can't really see the change in depth perception, and so she trips if she's going on something that's real uneven, because she can't really see that it's changed depths. So she worries a lot about, you know, is she walking on a flat surface? So if somebody like that has some kind of minor impairment, it doesn't prevent her from living her life, but if it was a really tight and narrow space, could somebody come and walk in the house and see you and be in and out of the house safely? It's something to consider. Maybe your parents are coming over. Maybe one of your girlfriends is coming over and she's, you know, broke her foot and she's using the crutches. Or she's got one of those little rolly carts and she has her foot up like that and she's rolling along on a little wheelie thing while her ankle heals. You got to make accommodation for that. And could somebody come and visit you and be in that place? Something to consider. So those are the sort of situations to think about. Those are ways that it can be hazardous for you. And I guess the advice about clearing it is, you don't want to clear it by picking it up off the floor and making the piles taller, because it does make the floor wider, but then it makes the falling hazard bigger. So that isn't the solution. But you do want to concentrate on picking stuff up out of the floor. And a lot of times things that end up in the floor because it just didn't get all the way to completion. Like you go shopping and you come in with the bag and you put it down and then you don't ever actually put it away. So it ends up looking like it's a really big, huge thing to clear away. But then when you start digging into it, it's not as bad. So I would go along and say, okay, I have a walker. Can I get through with a walker? And let that be your measurement. You know, imagine if you were holding onto a walker, could you get through here and turn the corner and go up and down the hall and get into the kitchen and get out to the door? And Let that be your gauge. And then pick everything up along the floor that isn't going to work. And start sorting and, don't worry about what's not in the floor. Just concentrate on what is in the floor and make those pathways clear. And then if you're super enthusiastic and you get all the floors clear, then I would go back and look for all the piles that are taller than you would be a good place to start. Because, and actually, in my head, they should be at below knee level. Because you don't want them to, even if they were this high falling into you, they would hurt you too, right? Like it's one thing to clip your knee on something, but it's another thing that it's tall enough they can fall on your head or fall on your shoulders or fall into the side of you and knock you over. So you want to shrink the height of the piles down as well. And sometimes the best way to do that is to undo the whole pile and find the stuff on the bottom that doesn't matter anymore. You get that out of the house, and then you can put the other stuff back. It's on the top because you wanted it more recently. Let the more recent stuff live there and let the old stuff go out. You see what I'm saying? So A, clear the floor pathways and concentrate on the ones that make you safe. I can run from the flood, I can run from the fire. Worry about those first. And then, can I get to the bathroom without hurting myself? That's a very important one because you got to go every night, I know you do. And then worry about the stuff that's taller than you. And then concentrate on the ones that are taller than you along the path of panicked running, right? Those pathways that you're going to use to escape, make those piles get shorter. That will go a long way to mitigate the physical risks of being in the house and not being able to escape in a hurry. If you can just make those things happen, you'll be in much better shape. Okay? Okay, now you get to ask me questions. I saw a lot of nodding tonight, actually. You guys were all going, yeah. So I know I'm describing things that are familiar to you. So who wants to share or ask a question about it? What's getting in the way for you? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I know I need to buy some fire hydrant or
Fire extinguishers.
Fire extinguishers. I don't
Mhm.
have any in my home, so I need to get some.
Well, you do because you have a little kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so little kids notorious for setting things on fire. I'm just saying, not girls. They don't have adult judgment, and sometimes things go awry with little kids. So fire extinguishers are good. And where do you can buy packs of them at Target and Home Depot and places like that. Yeah, and they're not super expensive. And you keep them for a while, and they have a little gauge, that tells you when they're not good anymore, and you either get them recharged or you throw them out and go buy some more. But they last for a while. I mean, they stay green for a while. So, what about you?
I think another thing that kind of goes into that category that we didn't mention is make sure that you know where a first aid kit is and that it's reachable.
Yeah, you don't want that to be buried under a bunch of stuff if somebody's bleeding heavily, right? Or if you're bleeding heavily, for instance. If you've fallen and hurt yourself and you don't want to leave a trail of blood all over the house while you go searching for the Band-Aids, right? Or, the ace bandage or whatever. So, good point. That needs to be accessible and easy.
Having piles of mail on your kitchen counter too close to your stove.
Well, that sounds like a hazard. Yes, it does. So, the immediate mitigation of that would be to get a box and put the mail in a box.
Yeah.
So it can't slide off into the stove, but make it not be a paper box. Make it be a box that will not catch on fire immediately. You know what I'm saying? And do that. The other thing about paper, and Jaime said this to me the other day, the thing about paper is one piece of paper on top of another piece of paper, slide, right? So it doesn't have to be 400 pieces of paper on the floor. It just has to be 2 of them, and you step on them, and you make one slide off the other, and you are on your butt, right? So that kind of stuff, we tend to not pick it up 100%, and it's the little extra pieces laying around that are the ones that are going to make you fall down. And like I said, we shrink the available motion space to an ever narrower path, which we can do while it's daylight and we're healthy and we're well and we're agile. And you know, if you take the light away and you add in panic and you add in, you know, anything that takes away from your normal regular mode of going up and down the stairs makes all of the crampiness dangerous for you suddenly.
Yeah.
Like you can do it 90% of the time, but then there's going to be that one time when you can't.
You know, there's actually something I thought of too that probably people don't think of, but just like if you have so much stuff laying around that you cannot like even vacuum properly and stuff like that, they say like mold spores collect on dust. They like love that. Let's say you have your ventilation system blocked with boxes of stuff, you're not getting proper
Right.
ventilation, and that can all affect your health.
Well, in papers,
Could you summarize that for the video?
oh yeah, she's saying that all of the stuff laying around creates dust and blocked airways, so that the air is not circulating correctly, creates dust and mold and
spores.
mold spores in the dust. So it becomes a health hazard for breathing because there's so much dust. And paper is just sitting there deteriorating in place. Like the paper is just sitting there turning to dust while you own it. And so it's just making stuff go in the air. And if you can't vacuum, like if the maid's gonna vacuum around the piles, if you know, there's always some amount of work that you can do, but if 25% of the house is buried and you can't get to it to clean it, it's just sitting there getting more and more dusty. And when I go work in people's houses where that's what we're doing, we're wading into the parts that haven't been cleaned for a long time, it's, you know, I'll find dust that's, you know, half an inch tall on top of stuff. Then I can just like make trails through it like it's the moon. I'm walking through the, you know, the dust on the moon. It's really incredible. And you're breathing that air. It's there in your space. And we live in air conditioned environments. We keep the doors closed. I mean, it's not like other parts of the country where we throw the windows open to get fresh air in. We don't do that here. And so you're just living in your own little petri dish of dust and mold spores and wondering why you're getting sicker and sicker. That's why. It makes clearing out all that dust all the more, it makes it harder for you to breathe. And a lot of my clients have asthma, they have, you know, allergies. You get dust allergies and you're living in a dust box, right? You're doing it for your own health. I mean, I know it's a pain and nobody wants to do it, but if you can actually get it, the person that's going to benefit is you. Now, if you have dust issues, stirring up the dust is a problem, right? So you gotta like wear a mask and make sure you're taking your meds and, you know, that kind of stuff. You may want somebody to come and vacuum a bunch of dust up before you get started so that it's not so hard for you to wade in. If you're somebody that's really triggered by dust, you don't want to kick up some, you know, a corner of the house that hasn't been undone for a decade, because there's going to be a lot of dust up in there. So sometimes you just have to go in and vacuum it out, vacuum around stuff before you start disturbing it all, just so you'll be able to breathe better. Yes, ma'am. You, I thought it was you. No, okay. Sorry. The point here is the person that's going to benefit from the work is you, and you are going to prevent disaster this way. And in my head, I want the EMT to be able to get to me. Like the guys with the gurney and the thing and the, you know, I want those guys to be able to get to me. And so I want the space clear so that they're not fighting to come and get me out. Like I'm heavy enough, it's going to be hard enough to get me out of the house. Like they shouldn't have to climb over a bunch of stuff to do it too, right? It just needs to be, the less time they take, the faster you get to the hospital, right? So just think of it that way. Like everything that you can do is something that's making it easier for people to help you when you need help. And do we need this kind of help every day? No, we do not. But that's the point. When you do need it, it's immediate and you need it right now, and you know, they better be able to get to you, right? Okay, if you guys don't have any more questions, then we're gonna call it a night. Thank you so much. See you next time.